Igor was late. He ducked into a side alley and stopped to catch his breath. In this dead end between a dry cleaner and a corner grocery, dozens of shabby little businesses had come and gone over the last 20 years. Land cafes and clearance shops, slot machines and payday lenders, notaries and repair counters, none of them ever lasted more than 5 years. Sometimes new tenants didn't even bother changing the signage, running their temporary hustle under an old name. The sign Igor was looking for was in the same spirit. The watch repair place called 5 Sec, the only shop that had lasted for years, hung crooked above a freshly something about Scenario 3. The girl fished a medical kit from a big bag, rummaged through ampules and syringes, and nodded, satisfied. That worried Igor, but he kept his questions to himself. When the city limits appeared ahead, the trainee realized this might be a long drive and pulled a sandwich from his jacket pocket. "Sorry, didn't have time for breakfast," he said. "Don't get crumbs everywhere," Dima muttered. Julia pulled a small thermos from the glove box and poured hot tea into the cap. She handed it to Igor. "Enjoy. Hurry while the road's still good." He nodded, and taking the tea from her, accidentally dropped his breakfast. With no other food likely before evening, Igor quickly scooped the sandwich off the floor mat and blew off the grit. "If you pick it up fast enough, it doesn't count," he joked awkwardly. 5-second rule. The driver and the girl exchanged a strange look. They drove in silence after that. When they turned off the highway toward a settlement, the potholes and patches began. Igor just managed to finish eating without dousing himself in tea or leaving a trail of crumbs. The village-like street dead-ended in the distance at a couple of awkward, out-of-place high-rises some factory's micro-district. Julia glanced back at the trainee as she took the thermos cap. "And don't you dare call him Marat Rubankovich. That's the shop teacher from some cheesy TV sketch show Ural Dumplings or whatever. His patronymic is Rubinovich." By now, Igor felt like they hadn't brought him to a nearby town, but to the recent past. A beat-up Lada, a track-suited bruiser, Ural Dumplings on TV. Give the girl a little more makeup and she'd be straight-up goth. "Here?" the driver asked, snapping Igor out of it, and the iPhone in Julia's hand shattered the early 2000s vibe for good. "Yeah, Dima. Entrance 5. They left the car by the edge of a playground and headed for one of the 5-story prefab blocks. On the bench by the entryway sat a gaunt old man with southern features and a grim stare. "This is Igor, the new guy," Julia said. "Did we make it?" Marat Rubinovich shook the trainee's hand without a word and nodded toward the door. All three followed him in. The stairwell reeked, and no one had cleaned it in ages. Climbing to the 5th floor past spit-covered cigarette butts, Igor started regretting the sandwich. Their destination was the filthiest door on the landing, with bits of insulation poking through torn vinyl. The surrounding walls, instead of the usual swears, were scrawled with email addresses and promises of earn $10K a day. Igor wondered if 5 Sec's business was any more legal than the dead-drop dealers. "Kick it?" Dima asked, rolling his shoulders. Marat Rubinovich closed his eyes, then shook his head decisively. "We've got time. Let's keep it quiet." When Julia pulled a set of pics from her bottomless bag, Igor finally got properly uneasy. "Is that legal?" he couldn't help asking. "Depends on the outcome," the old man said calmly. The 3-room apartment was a stereotype of a drug den. The stench, heaps of leftovers on the tables mixed with glasses, bottles, ashtrays cobbled from jars and syringes, piles of rags and stained mattresses in the corners. Furniture consisted of one collapsed couch in the living room. While the others fanned out and prodded the makeshift sleeping spots, Igor poked his head into the combined bath. The toilet was foul, dried vomit crusted the sink, and the tub was filled with rusty water, its scratched bottom showing through. Fighting back nausea, the trainee ran to the grimy kitchen and took a few deep breaths at the open window. Behind him, things suddenly got busy. "In the tub!" shouted Marat Rubinovich. "There's no—" Igor started, but no one was listening. He stepped into the hallway and watched, astonished, as the old man, in the cramped bathroom, unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a pale, sagging chest. Dima stood beside him, rolling up his sleeves, and Julia crouched in the doorway, riffling the med kit. The half-undressed Marat froze for a second, then plunged his hands into the murky water. Something yanked him down so hard he almost went under. Dima grabbed the old man under the chest and hauled back. He growled with effort. Veins bulged on his forehead over a darkening face. A spray of water hit the walls and ceiling with a loud slap. The big man crashed onto his back, dragging with him both Marat and a naked, soaking wet guy they'd hauled out of the tub. They all took a minute to catch their breath. Then Dima got up, helped the old man to his feet, scooped the stringy drowned man into his arms, and carried him to the living room. While Julia worked on resuscitating the stranger, Igor just stared dumbly at the open bathroom door. The water hadn't been that murky. You should have seen someone in there. "Grab some rags," Dima smacked him on the back. "Neighbors downstairs will be here any second." In a daze, the trainee mopped the floor, wringing the filthy water back into the tub. A rasping cough sounded from the living room. When he peeked in, the drowned man lay on the broken couch. Julia pulled a needle from the guy's wrist and tossed the syringe onto a floor already littered with them. She noticed Igor's frightened eyes and gave him a tired smile. "He'll be fine by evening." They drove back without talking, old songs playing on the radio. Igor slowly calmed down. They'd locked the apartment carefully, stole nothing. What was there to steal? And brought the guy back. But where had he come from? How could Igor have missed him? "You okay?" Julia touched his hand. Now they both sat in the back. Marat had taken the passenger seat. "So we're volunteers? Saving addicts?" "Kind of," Julia smirked. "And not just addicts. You'll get it." "I have to ask," Igor faltered. "That guy, I didn't see him in the tub." "He was there," she winked. "Like that gopher, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there." At the office door, Marat announced the end of the shift, paid them, and slipped inside. 1,000 rubles for half a day. Pretty decent. Igor even thought about asking Julia to a cheap cafe and learning more about her and their strange work. Something about this absolutely unflashy girl drew him in. Maybe it was just the long stretch without any relationship, but Dima ruined his plans by asking, "Who needs a ride?" "Me home," Julia said, waved to Igor, and went to the car. "I'll walk," the trainee said, thoughtful, shaking Dima's solid hand. That week they had 4 more runs under Scenario 3, all in town. Now the squeamish newbie was left by the door in case neighbors interfered. After the seniors did their thing, Igor handled the dirty work. He only mopped a bathroom floor once. In the other cases, he had to erase traces more carefully because the ODs were found in their beds and the apartments looked respectable enough. The last case was in a neighborhood of detached houses. Standing watch in a tiny front yard, Igor peeked through a window. Big bed, a tangle of sheets, and a thick down comforter. Marat burrowed headfirst into the heap and unearthed a tiny old woman, unconscious. Not an addict, most likely she'd accidentally poisoned herself with the pile of meds on the nightstand. Julia gave her a quick check and shook her head, then made a call, and the team left in a hurry. A few blocks later, an ambulance passed them. And again, Igor could have sworn there was nobody in that bed until Marat got his hands in there, though a miniature grandma could get lost in all that linen. Week 2 started with something new. "Scenario 2, Dima announced by way of hello. Igor shrugged and opened the back door. A new, barely settled district greeted them with unusually tall buildings for their town. The white Lada pulled into a courtyard. Marat, as always, was already there. "Stay in the car," Dima tossed over his shoulder and ran around the corner with Julia. Like hell, thought the trainee, finally determined to figure out these scenarios. Rounding the building, he heard a scream from above and looked up. Igor had always envied people who instinctively look away from gruesome things. He was the kind who froze and couldn't stop watching a cat get hit by a car, and so on, knowing it would make him cry or retch. A woman was falling from the roof. Any second, her head would pop like a melon right next to him and spray him with... Without a sound, her body slipped into the asphalt, as if it had fallen through the textures of a video game. Marat ran up, rolled his eyes like he was listening to something, then said firmly, "Deep." "Knew it," Dima replied, uncoiling a thick rope from his shoulder. He tied the rope around the old man's chest and shoulders and tossed the end to Igor. "Since you're here, pull." Marat arched and dove headfirst into the asphalt like a practiced diver, vanishing completely. "No splash!" The rope jerked. Igor and Dima pulled, meeting huge resistance. Julia arrived and grabbed on too. The three of them slowly drew the rope out of the walkway, as if the solid asphalt were dense gray fog. What if someone sees? Igor thought. A beige jacket broke the gray surface, then Marat himself, hauling behind him a woman who was shrieking and thrashing wildly. Julia rushed in and jabbed something into the woman's shoulder. The woman's eyes bulged even wider, then she went limp and checked out. Igor had to help Dima get the plus-sized lady into the elevator and then carry her to the roof. Julia had already called an ambulance and the police to report a suicide attempt. No one worried she'd babble something odd. People in that state said all kinds of nonsense, but they all understood it was time to let the trainee in on the details. How did I not think of Constantine right away? Igor shook his head, still trembling. They got to hell through a bathtub in that too. What hell? Julia laughed, glancing around the small, mostly empty cafe. It's just another plane, another dimension, whatever. Most people just die. But if you hurry death along yourself, some of them fall into that other place. And the scenarios? 3 is an OD, 2 is suicide. What if it's suicide by overdose? Any suicide is 2, she said. It's the intent that matters. So what's 1? That's special. I hope you never find out. And Marat Rubinovich, what is he? A mage? A psychic? A demon? Julia laughed musically. Just an old man. He simply knows when and where it's going to happen. If you pull someone up fast enough, they'll be okay. The 5-second rule? Igor smirked. Is that why you kept the name 5-sec? Total coincidence, Julia shrugged. Though the idea is similar, and it's safe to pull for several minutes sometimes. Depends. And if you're too late? Then it's better to leave them there, she said seriously. They pick up germs? Or something worse? Julia poked at her phone for a while. Then she looked up at Igor, who was grinning stupidly. I sent you a clip. Watch it at home. It's never too late to walk away. Too late, Igor thought, drowning in those deep greenish-gray irises. That evening, after walking Julia to her building, he tried to kiss her, and unexpectedly didn't meet any resistance. I'd invite you in, she whispered, but not yet. Next time, I promise. She winked and disappeared inside. Igor felt that, for the near future, his life's purpose had become that next time. The file was dated August 20th, just a week before Igor joined. He grabbed a beer from the fridge, poured it into a glass, and maximized the player. On screen, another junkie flopper squat. Dima's familiar bulk, the old man's skinny silhouette, and an unfamiliar young guy. Igor's predecessor? Did they used to film every run? No Julia, was she behind the camera? No, the frame was too steady. It was a tripod. Marat spoke softly but insistently, trying to persuade the stranger. The guy was stubborn. Shame the audio was muddy. With a wave, the old man stepped aside. The guy picked up a familiar medkit, took out a syringe, rolled up a sleeve, and clumsily tightened a belt. His hands shook. He injected, stood there for a moment, then dropped flat on his back, sinking into the heap of rags on the dirty floor. The beer suddenly wasn't tasty anymore. Igor pushed the glass away and stared grimly at the monitor. The old man paced, agitated, then stopped over the fall. Damn you all! Who is he talking to? He did it himself. Clean one, Dima said calmly, still just watching. Practically a kid. Marat slashed the air with his hand and dropped into the floor after his charge. For a few seconds, the big man didn't move. Then he smacked his thigh with his fist. Son of a... He lunged to the pile of rags, shoved his hand into the floor, grabbed the edge of a familiar jacket, and slowly hauled up the rest. Drop it, Dima shouted. Something writhed in the old man's hands, something that only vaguely resembled the kid who'd just fallen. Igor hit pause and rubbed his eyes, then zoomed in. It was the same guy, no doubt. But he looked... In photography, it's called a long exposure effect, when a moving subject appears in several positions at once. A fan of arms, a smeared face like layers of masks stacked together. The effect distorted only that person, as if several entities were trying to occupy him at once. "Drop it!" Dima yelled again, but it was too late. The long exposure boy tore free and careened around the room, smashing what little furniture there was. Dima re-entered frame with an axe. He wrestled the thing down, pinned its chest with his knee, raised the axe. A head with layered faces like a grotesque cabbage rolled toward the camera, splashing dark liquid. Igor once again wished he knew how to look away. His first thought was to run, pack what mattered and take a train as far as he could, hitchhike from there into the back of beyond. He had almost no family, no friends. It would be hard to find him. The police. No point. They'd call the video a fake and hit him with libel. Even if they did stir, how well had Dima cleaned up? Would they even find a headless body? The guy with the axe would find the snitch first. After what he'd already seen on the job, Igor had no doubt the clip was real. But why show it to him? Was Julia warning him? Was she in danger now too? His head throbbed. What if all three were putting on a show just for him? Then why bother with the video? They could have offed him in any flophouse, and Murat didn't look like some cackling villain, more like a man trapped by circumstances. And as for Dima, the dumb jock, what kind of puppeteer was he, unless a very talented one? And Julia. He wanted so badly to believe in Julia. "You stayed because of me?" Under the blanket together, it was very warm, almost hot. Heating season hadn't started, but Frost was hinting that winter was near. For a month and a half, Igor kept working and tried to act like nothing had happened. Sometimes he felt Dima's ironic glances on his back. Mara, as always, showed up only on calls, paid on time, and vanished into the office. With Julia, things had just happened. "Julia, let's run away, together." "Scared?" She nestled her cheek to his bare chest. "Dima isn't cruel. Vitalik just wasn't lucky. We pulled too late. He already picked up things. There was no other choice. What if that happens to me? What if it happens to you? You really worry about me that much?" "I've never worried about anyone this much," Igor said honestly. "Let's go to the sea, yeah?" Julia looked at him with wet, beautiful eyes, sniffled, and squeezed him all over. "I'll think about it. Next time I'll give you a real answer." Next time. A cold October morning started like any other. Dima warmed up his wreck of a car, and Igor sipped tea from a thermos, lost in thought. Their colleague ran into the alley a little late, cheeks pleasantly flushed. They drove to a number 2 in silence, as usual. Suicides were harder. Unlike comatose junkies, they had to be pulled conscious, just in a very particular state of mind. Once, Igor asked Murat what was down there, exactly. The old man shrugged and said evasively, "Depends." The little apartment was a mess that screamed party lifestyle. Completing the picture, a baby shrieking in a shabby crib. While Yulia tended to the child, feeding and changing him, the old man paced from room to kitchen and back. He seemed off, unable to find the place of the fall. Finally, he stopped right in the middle of the living room. "Here, not much time." Dima swept aside the coffee table buried under a scatter of colorful pills and bottles. Igor looked at Julia and suddenly imagined she was holding their child. Something long forgotten, boarded up in the farthest corner of his heart, stirred. She smiled. Noise on the floor made him turn. Murat and Dima were hauling a shaggy red-headed girl out of the rug. She screeched and clawed viciously. "Hold him!" Julia said, handing the baby to Igor, then rushed to the pulled girl with a syringe ready. "Bastards!" the redhead screamed, shoved the old man away, grabbed Julia by the hair, and dropped back through the floor with her. Murat cracked his head on the TV stand and went out. Igor dumped the howling baby in the crib and dove to the floor, grabbing his girlfriend's hand. Something snapped. He tumbled backward with a severed woman's hand, blood running freely. The hole must have closed or something like that. No, Igor roared and caught a fist in the jaw. When his head stopped spinning, Dima loomed over him. "Shut it, idiot! The neighbors are used to the redhead screaming. They'll call the cops on you." "We have to pull Yulia," Igor hissed, grabbing Dima by the collar. "Cut me down if you must, just get her back." "I can't. Only Rubinovich can, when he wakes up, if there's still time." Igor crawled helplessly across the rug, slapping his palms against the hard floor where the hole had been. The blood was almost invisible on the worn maroon pattern. Julia's hand lay nearby, fingers twitching slightly. She was down there, badly injured, terrified, and abandoned. She needed saving. Igor swept a pile of pills from the table into his mouth, gagging as he chewed. He chased them with the first bottle he could grab, lay down on the blood-wet rug, and waited. Luckily, it hit fast. His heart hammered, thoughts slid backward and sideways along with the room. Igor felt himself sinking into the floor, like into a deep grave. He remembered seeing something like it in a movie about junkies, and marveled at how accurate it was. The bright rectangle above drifted away, shrinking. In it, Dima's impassive face appeared, then Marat rubbing his head, looking pained. Between them leaned Julia. She gave him an apologetic smile and held out both hands. Both of them were there. Igor had been sitting at the table for what felt like forever. His head had cleared long ago. Even the nausea was gone. Honestly, he felt almost nothing. The room around him had a strange, many-angled geometry. The number of corners and gray plank walls, ceilings, kept changing. Only the floor stayed stable, with the table and 2 stools on it. Marat sat across from him, talking, animated, maybe for hours. That's why they named me Marat, not an Armenian name at all, really. For the first time, the trainee noticed a smile on his boss's face. Sad, guilty, but real. "Well, I've stayed too long. They'll be pulling me any second." "The 5 seconds are up?" Igor smirked. "Afraid so. Up there it's a second. Down here could be anything. From a blink to years. That's why some of them fight so hard. They don't remember what their world was, that there was any other world at all. You and I got lucky we had time to talk. I'm sorry." "Why me?" The old man sighed deeply. "Not everyone we pull becomes a puller, but anyone who gets that gift pays a price. Many years ago my family died. An earthquake. I couldn't take it and jumped off a bridge. Didn't splatter, I fell. Got pulled up, as you see. There are lots of outfits like ours. Sometimes you bump into one where you'd least expect it. We were a little late and I snagged a couple of things on the way back. Clever ones, they didn't show themselves right away. Looked just like people. You know them very well. We have a deal. They don't stop me from pulling and even help. But for every 100 I pull up, I have to give them one. A scenario 1? Exactly. Junkies, crazies, weaklings, they're trash to them. But someone who offers himself up on purpose that's rare and precious. How many before me? In our town? Just you and Vitalik so far? People here are hard-hearted, but guys fall for her hard to avoid. Marat stood and waved sadly. No hard feelings. Maybe we'll meet again. B. Next time, Julia's voice rang in his head. The old man disappeared, leaving Igor with the feeling the conversation had happened years ago. Scratching and knocking grew clearer behind the angular boards. It's rude to keep guests waiting on the doorstep. Igor grabbed the stool, feeling a strange lightness in his body, and started smashing a way out.